Have you ever wondered how many people in your life are not who they seem to be? How many smiles hide intentions that would shatter you if you saw them clearly? It's a question most avoid because the truth is uncomfortable. We want to believe the best in others. We want to think that kindness is genuine, that connection is safe, and that the warmth someone shows us comes from a place of sincerity. But not everyone who enters your life does so with good intentions. Some wear masks so convincing that even the strongest hearts fail to see the danger until it is too late. Evil doesn't always announce itself with cruelty on the surface. It doesn't always show up as aggression or open hostility. More often, it arrives disguised as charm, as interest, as support. It slips quietly into your world, slowly earning your trust until you begin to believe it has a place in your life. And by the time you realize what it truly is, damage has already been done. That is the danger of underestimating the hidden faces of evil. You might think evil is rare, that it only exists in the extremes we hear about in news headlines. But the truth is more unsettling. Evil often thrives in ordinary places, workplaces, friendships, even family circles. It operates in the shadows, not always through violence, but through manipulation, deception, and control. It thrives on the fact that most people don't want to believe it's there, and this denial becomes its greatest weapon. The world teaches you to be kind, to be forgiving, to look for the good in others, and while these values are beautiful, they can also blind you if you're not careful, because the very qualities that make you compassionate are the ones that make you vulnerable. Evil knows this. It knows how to appeal to your empathy, how to mirror your values, how to play the part of the person you think you can trust. And if you don't recognize it, you risk giving your heart, your loyalty, and your energy to someone who only intends to use them against you. This is why awareness is everything. Once you learn to recognize the signs, the mask begins to slip. You start to notice patterns you once ignored. You begin to trust your instincts instead of silencing them. And most importantly, you protect yourself from harm before it's too late. Because the truth is this, evil only wins when you refuse to see it. If you've ever felt confused by someone's behavior, if you've ever questioned why a relationship left you feeling drained, doubting yourself, or carrying guilt that wasn't yours to carry, then this message is for you. You're not weak for being fooled. You're human. But from this point forward, you no longer have to stay blind. You no longer have to stay vulnerable. Stay with me because in the moments ahead, you will discover the unmistakable signs that reveal when someone is not just toxic, but truly dangerous. You will gain the clarity to see what others miss and the strength to walk away before your peace, your confidence, and your future are stolen from you. This is not just knowledge, it's protection, it's power. And once you have it, you will never look at the world the same way again. If evil hides behind charm and false kindness, why do so many people fall into its trap? The answer is not weakness. It's not because you lack intelligence or strength. It's because your mind is wired to trust. Human beings were built for connection, for community, for survival, through cooperation. For thousands of years, your ancestors depended on trust to protect their lives. Believing in others wasn't optional. It was essential. That instinct still lives in you today, and it makes you open your heart far more easily than you close it. But this very instinct, this natural tendency to see the best in others, is what those with dark intentions exploit. They know most people hesitate to suspect malice. They know suspicion feels uncomfortable, even disloyal. They know you would rather doubt yourself than doubt the person standing in front of you. And so they use that hesitation against you. They cloak themselves in charm, in politeness, in occasional acts of kindness, and you convince yourself that any red flag you feel must be an overreaction. Psychologists call it the halo effect, the mind's habit of assuming that if someone shows one good quality, then they must be good overall. If they're generous once, you assume they're generous at heart. If they appear caring in one moment, you extend that belief across everything they do. Evil knows how to plant those seeds in your mind. It gives you just enough goodness to overshadow the darkness that lurks underneath. And because you want to believe in people, you water those seeds with trust, ignoring the weeds growing around them. Think of how many times you've told yourself maybe they didn't mean it, or they're just having a bad day. How often you've silenced your instincts because you wanted to keep the peace or because you didn't want to seem judgmental. That hesitation is exactly what keeps you vulnerable. And while you give the benefit of the doubt, they tighten their grip. But here's the truth you need to hold on to. Being kind does not mean being blind. Being compassionate does not mean being naive. You can have a heart that is open and giving, while still protecting yourself with eyes wide open. Awareness is not a loss of kindness. It is the highest form of self-respect. If you want to protect your peace, you must recognize that not everyone deserves access to it. Not everyone who smiles has earned the right to your trust, and not everyone who claims to care has your best interests at heart. By understanding why you are naturally inclined to trust, you reclaim control. You begin to see the psychological tricks for what they are, not reflections of your worth, but strategies designed to disarm you. The reward for this awareness is freedom. Freedom from manipulation, freedom from doubt, freedom from the guilt of constantly questioning yourself when, deep down, you already know the truth. When you understand the way your mind works, you stop handing over the keys to it so easily. You stop confusing false kindness with genuine goodness. You stop mistaking charm for character. And once you begin to see with clarity, the power shifts. You no longer live at the mercy of those who seek to control you. You no longer bend under the weight of someone else's lies. You rise above it with strength, with certainty, with the unshakable knowledge that your trust is sacred and not everyone deserves it. The most dangerous disguise evil wears is charm. It is the mask that blinds even the most cautious minds. When someone is charming, it feels magnetic. Their words flow smoothly, their presence feels uplifting, and they make you feel seen in ways others do not. It is intoxicating, and that's why it works. Charm lowers your guard. It disarms your instincts. It gives you a sense of safety while quietly preparing the ground for control. Charm is not the same as kindness. Kindness is consistent. It shows itself in quiet actions and reliability and truth that doesn't change when no one is watching. Charm, on the other hand, is a performance. It's designed to impress, to create a version of someone that looks perfect on the surface. But the moment you look deeper, you realize it is hollow. Psychologists have shown that charm activates the same reward pathways in the brain as recognition or praise. It gives you a hit of dopamine. It makes you feel good, which makes you less likely to question motives. That's why people who seek control rely on it. They know if they can keep you entertained by their surface, you won't look for the cracks underneath. Have you ever noticed how charm often fades when no one is left to impress? The person who is warm and glowing in public may become cold, dismissive, or indifferent in private. This inconsistency is the first clue. Genuine character does not shift with an audience, but someone who uses charm as a weapon will turn it on and off depending on what they need to gain. If you pay close attention, you'll see that the mask always slips eventually. The question is whether you are willing to see it when it does. The danger is not in being drawn to charm. That is human. The danger is in mistaking charm for truth. When you convince yourself that someone's charisma equals their integrity, you hand them influence over your emotions, your decisions, and even your sense of self. And once you allow that, they can shape your reality to suit their intentions. This is how people end up silenced, doubting themselves, and trapped in connections that drain them. You must remember that charm is temporary, but patterns are permanent. Anyone can create a polished image for a moment. Anyone can tell you what you want to hear when it benefits them. But no one can fake integrity over time. That is why you must train yourself to look beyond the surface. Watch how they treat people who cannot give them anything in return. Watch how they behave when things don't go their way. Watch how they respond when you set boundaries. These moments reveal truth far louder than charm ever could. The real power lies in refusing to be hypnotized by the mask. When you hold on to your clarity, charm loses its grip. You can appreciate the surface without surrendering your judgment. You can enjoy someone's presence without abandoning your standards. You can listen to their words while still holding them accountable for their actions. That balance is what keeps you safe. The gift of recognizing charm for what it truly is brings you freedom. Freedom to walk into any room without fear of being deceived. Freedom to give your trust intentionally instead of recklessly. Freedom to know that no matter how polished someone appears, you will always see what lies beneath. And that freedom is what turns vulnerability into strength. Because when you can see clearly, no mask can control you. Once the mask of charm has done its work, the next weapon that appears is guilt. It is subtle at first, but powerful enough to bend even the strongest will. Evil people know that the easiest way to control a good heart is to make it question itself. They twist words, rewrite situations, and leave you carrying weight that was never yours to hold. Suddenly, you find yourself apologizing for things you didn't do just to restore peace. You find yourself doubting your intentions as if every act of kindness hides some hidden flaw. This is not an accident, it is a strategy. Guilt is one of the most powerful levers in human psychology. It works because it triggers your need to make things right, to repair, to keep harmony. And those with malicious intent exploit that. They frame themselves as the victim, turning your natural compassion against you. They shift responsibility onto your shoulders, and because you don't want to hurt anyone, you accept it. The longer you carry it, the heavier it feels, until eventually you lose sight of where you end and they begin. Gaslighting is one of the most devastating forms of this manipulation. It makes you doubt your memory, your perception, your very sense of reality. They deny what they said, they rewrite events, they make you feel irrational for noticing their behavior. And each time you question yourself, their control deepens. The more you explain yourself, the more you fall into the trap. Soon, guilt becomes the cage you live in, built not from your own mistakes, but from the lies you've been forced to believe. But here is the truth they don't want you to see. Guilt only has power when you accept responsibility for what does not belong to you. If you stop owning their mistakes, their stories, their distortions, the chains fall off, the weight lifts. You begin to see that what you've been carrying was never yours at all. The moment you draw that line, their weapon becomes useless. You must learn to separate healthy guilt from poison guilt. Healthy guilt corrects you when you've crossed your own values. It teaches you, refines you, helps you grow. Poison guilt is forced onto you by someone who seeks control. It doesn't teach, it weakens, it doesn't guide, it confuses, it doesn't free, it binds. And once you can tell the difference, you will never again allow anyone to control you with a tool meant only for your growth. Your power lies in refusing to let false guilt dictate your choices. You can listen to your instincts without apology. You can hold your boundaries without shame. You can say no and stand firm without carrying the burden of someone else's disappointment. That strength doesn't make you cold, it makes you whole. It gives you the ability to love freely because your love is no longer chained to fear. Imagine the freedom of walking away from conversations without replaying them in your mind 1,000 times. Imagine no longer bending under the pressure of someone else's narrative. Imagine being so grounded in truth that no amount of twisting can make you question your worth. That freedom is waiting for you, and it begins the moment you decide that guilt is no longer a leash around your neck, but a signal only you control. When you claim that power, no one can use your own heart against you again. When guilt no longer works, the next strategy is to exploit your kindness. This is one of the most devastating tactics because it targets the very core of who you are. Evil people know that a compassionate soul will always try to help, will always try to give, will always go the extra mile to make sure others are cared for. They test your boundaries slowly, never demanding everything at once, but inch by inch, taking more than they deserve. At first, it feels harmless. A small request, a little favor, something so minor you can't imagine refusing. But each time you say yes without question, the door opens wider. Before long, your generosity is no longer a choice. It's an expectation. This is the psychology of the foot in the door technique, a method proven to create compliance. Start small, build trust, then escalate. Evil people use it instinctively. They know that once you say yes to something small, it becomes harder to say no to something larger. You don't want to seem inconsistent. You don't want to look selfish. You don't want to betray the image of kindness that defines you. And so you give again and again and again until what was once a strength becomes a chain. Kindness was never meant to be used as a weapon against you. It is a gift, not an obligation. When it is freely given, it lights the world. When it is stolen, it drains the very soul that offers it. The danger is not in being kind, but in forgetting that kindness without boundaries becomes self-destruction. There is nothing noble about being consumed by those who only take. There is nothing virtuous about sacrificing yourself to people who never intended to give in return. True kindness requires strength because it demands that you choose where, when, and to whom your energy flows. It demands that you protect your heart as fiercely as you protect others. Evil thrives when you forget this truth because the more you give without limit, the weaker you become. And the weaker you become, the easier you are to control. But strength rises the moment you decide that your kindness is yours to direct. Saying no does not make you cruel. Refusing to be exploited does not make you cold. Protecting your energy does not make you selfish. It makes you wise. Every time you draw a line, Every time you refuse to be used, you are not rejecting your compassion. You are honoring it. You are preserving it for those who are worthy of it, those who will respect it, those who will return it. Imagine the power of offering kindness without fear, because you know it cannot be twisted against you. Imagine helping others without resentment, because you chose it freely. Imagine walking through life knowing your heart is still soft, but your boundaries are steel. That balance is not weakness, it is mastery. Evil people want you to believe that saying no is wrong, that withholding your energy makes you heartless. But the truth is simple. Every yes you give to someone unworthy is a no to yourself. And when you continually say no to yourself, you lose the strength to rise, to grow, to thrive. Reclaim that yes. Reclaim that power. Let your kindness remain pure by guarding it fiercely. Because once you understand that boundaries protect your compassion, no one will ever use your goodness against you again. When kindness is no longer enough to control you, the next weapon unleashed is deception. Lies become the fabric they weave around your life, designed to confuse, distract, and weaken you. It rarely begins with grand falsehoods. Instead, it starts with small distortions, leaving out details, twisting words, exaggerating just enough to shift perception. These fragments of dishonesty slowly pile up until you can no longer tell where the truth ends and their manipulation begins. And that is the point. They want you lost in doubt, unsure of what to believe, questioning your own memory more than you question their words. Deception is not random. It is deliberate. It is how control is maintained, by feeding you half-truths. They can create a version of reality where they hold the power and you remain uncertain. Lies are repeated until they sound like facts, and research has proven that repetition itself creates belief. The brain begins to accept what it hears often enough, even when it contradicts experience. This is called the illusion of truth effect, and it is the weapon evil people rely on. Because if they can make you doubt your own perception, they no longer need to prove anything. You will silence your instincts for them. The danger of constant deception is not only that it misleads you, it erodes your trust in yourself. Every time you catch a lie, you wonder if you imagined it. Every time you sense dishonesty, you second-guess your feelings. Over time, your confidence weakens. You begin to depend on them to clarify reality. And that dependence becomes the very chain that binds you. That is how lies turn into control. Not through a single act, but through a slow dismantling of your self-trust. But no matter how skilled the liar, there is one truth they cannot erase: your instincts. Deep within, your body recognizes dishonesty before your mind explains it. A shift in tone, a contradiction in their words, a feeling that something is off, even when everything sounds polished. That quiet inner alarm is your greatest protection. The tragedy is that most people ignore it, convincing themselves it's just anxiety or overthinking. But the moment you choose to believe it, the grip of deception begins to break. You must train yourself to value patterns over promises. Anyone can say the right words in a single moment, but consistency reveals character. Lies cannot hold forever. Deception always cracks under the weight of truth. When you stop silencing your instincts, you begin to see the fractures. And once you see them, you can no longer be blinded. There's power in choosing clarity over comfort. It is easier to believe a lie that feels good than to accept a truth that feels painful. But comfort built on deception always collapses. It steals years, it drains energy, it destroys self-worth. Clarity, no matter how harsh, gives you strength. It restores your ability to trust yourself. It gives you the foundation to build a life that cannot be manipulated. The moment you decide that lies no longer deserve a place in your world, everything changes. You reclaim your voice. You reclaim your mind. You reclaim the ability to stand in truth without needing permission. That choice is not easy, but it is freedom. And once you choose freedom, deception loses its power forever. The darkest sign of all is not the charm, not the guilt, not even the lies. It is the quiet satisfaction they feel when you suffer. This is where their mask drops completely, where the truth of who they are can no longer be disguised. You can see it in the subtle smirk when you're struggling, the faint spark in their eyes when you're hurting, the twisted calm they show when chaos surrounds you. For them, your pain is not tragedy, it is entertainment. Your weakness is not an accident they regret, it is a victory they celebrate. This is the essence of evil, the absence of empathy. While normal human hearts ache when others hurt, theirs feels nothing but delight. Neuroscience has shown that empathy lights up the brain with connection, with understanding, with a shared sense of humanity. But in those who thrive on harm, those circuits are dark. Instead of compassion, they feel power. Instead of sorrow, they feel pleasure. That is why they sabotage, why they betray, why they wound without hesitation. It is not just about getting what they want. It is about enjoying what you lose. The most dangerous part is how they disguise this hunger. They will laugh it off, play it down, or pretend it was unintentional. They will frame their cruelty as a joke, their sabotage as a mistake, their mockery as harmless fun. But you feel it. You feel the sting that lingers long after the moment has passed. You feel the erosion of your spirit when you realize they find joy in what tears you apart. That is not care. That is not love. That is not friendship. That is proof of evil. Your spirit was never meant to be someone else's playground. Your struggles are not toys to be mocked. Your battles are not scenes for amusement. You deserve people who lift you, who grieve with you, who celebrate your victories instead of resenting them. Anyone who smiles at your suffering does not deserve a place in your life. To tolerate that presence is to declare that your soul is expendable, that your pain is acceptable, that your dignity is negotiable. And it is not. Recognizing this truth is liberation. It is the moment you realize that no matter how many excuses they offer, no matter how much charm they wrap themselves in, no one who enjoys your pain is safe to keep near. That recognition may hurt, but it is the clean pain of clarity, not the corrosive pain of being used. It is the wound that heals instead of the one that festers. You hold the power to draw the line. You hold the right to say enough. The moment you stop tolerating the presence of those who thrive on your suffering, you make space for those who celebrate your joy. You make room for relationships that build instead of destroy, for connections that heal instead of harm. There is nothing stronger than choosing to walk away from the hands that push you down and moving toward the voices that lift you up. That choice declares to the world and to yourself that your spirit cannot be broken for someone else's entertainment. That choice is the highest act of self-respect. And once you make it, evil loses the last of its grip, because no darkness can thrive in the life of someone who refuses to suffer for another's pleasure. When you understand these signs yet choose to ignore them, the cost is far greater than you imagine. Evil is not passive. It does not sit quietly in the background while you live your life untouched. It grows stronger every day. It goes unchallenged. Every time you excuse their behavior, every time you dismiss the unease in your gut, every time you choose silence over truth, you give them permission to dig deeper into your soul. And once they are rooted there, pulling them out becomes a battle that scars you from the inside out. The damage begins slowly. Your self-esteem starts to erode, not through one blow, but through 1,000 cuts. A small comment here, a subtle manipulation there, until eventually you stop recognizing yourself. You begin to doubt your worth, because when someone constantly undermines you, it becomes harder to hold on to your own reflection. Confidence that once felt natural turns fragile, and you start measuring yourself through their distorted lens instead of your own truth. Over time, this erosion spreads into every corner of your life. You stop trusting your instincts. You second-guess your choices. You hold back your voice, fearing that it will be silenced, mocked, or turned against you. Relationships outside of their influence begin to suffer because you carry the weight of their control into spaces that once felt safe. Slowly, your world shrinks until the only reality you know is the one they've constructed for you. This is how trauma bonds are formed. It is not love, not loyalty, but a cycle of harm and reward that keeps you tied to what destroys you. The same person who wounds you becomes the one you look to for comfort. The same hand that pushes you down offers to lift you up. And in that twisted rhythm, you remain trapped. Psychology has proven that intermittent reinforcement, the unpredictable mix of cruelty and kindness, is one of the strongest forms of conditioning. It creates dependency. It convinces you that leaving will only bring more pain than staying. And so you stay. But staying comes with a cost that compounds every single day. Anxiety becomes constant, your body living in a state of hypervigilance, waiting for the next attack. Depression begins to creep in, stealing your energy, your joy, your will to move forward. The longer you endure, the more you forget that life can be different, that peace can exist, that freedom is possible, that forgetting is the ultimate victory for evil, because when you can no longer imagine a better life, you stop fighting for it. Yet the truth remains. Ignoring the signs does not protect you. It destroys you. Pretending not to see will never make the danger disappear. Awareness may be painful, but it is the only path to freedom. It is the only way to reclaim what is yours, your voice, your strength, your future. You must ask yourself what is truly worth more, the comfort of denial or the liberation of truth. One will keep you in chains, the other will set you free. The moment you decide to face reality without excuses, without illusions, you cut the cord that holds you to destruction. You step out of the fog and into clarity. That clarity may demand courage, but it will give you back everything you've lost. And no matter how much time has passed, it is never too late to choose it. The first step to reclaiming yourself is refusing to let confusion be your prison. Evil thrives on distortion. It twists facts, rewrites events, and plants seeds of doubt until you question your memory, your judgment, even your sanity. This is not an accident. It is a deliberate tactic to keep you powerless. The longer you live in that fog, the harder it becomes to see where truth ends and manipulation begins. That's why clarity is not optional. It is survival. Clarity begins when you decide to trust the signals your body has been sending you all along. The tightness in your chest, the knot in your stomach, the sleepless nights, these are not random. They are alarms telling you that something is wrong. For too long, you may have silenced those alarms, convincing yourself you were overreacting. But those instincts exist to protect you. When you finally listen, when you stop dismissing them, you open the door to freedom. The mind will resist, because breaking free from manipulation is not only an external fight, it is an internal battle against the false beliefs you were conditioned to accept. You may hear the voice of doubt whispering that you're being unfair, that you're exaggerating, that things weren't really that bad, but that voice is not yours. It is theirs, planted deep enough that you mistake it for your own. Real transformation begins when you separate their voice from your truth, when you stop carrying their lies as your identity. Psychology shows that self-awareness is the foundation of resilience. The more clearly you identify patterns of harm, the less power they hold. The act of naming manipulation strips it of its mystery. Once you recognize gaslighting, it cannot confuse you in the same way. Once you understand projection, it can no longer trick you into carrying guilt that isn't yours. Knowledge gives you the strength to detach, to stop taking their cruelty personally, to see that their actions reflect who they are, not who you are. But clarity alone is not enough. You must pair it with courage, the courage to set boundaries, to say no, to refuse to play their games. Evil will not respect silence, and it will not honor passivity. The moment you stop feeding it attention, the moment you refuse to bend to its manipulation, you begin starving its control. That is the beginning of true power, the quiet, unshakable power of self-respect. Self-respect is the shield that protects you from being consumed. It is the voice that says, I deserve better, and repeats it until you believe it fully. Every act of self-respect, no matter how small, weakens their grip. Every time you stand firm, you remind yourself that your worth is not negotiable. This is how healing begins, not in a single dramatic moment, but in consistent choices that reclaim your dignity piece by piece. The transformation waiting for you on the other side is not just freedom from them. It is the rediscovery of who you were always meant to be. Without the weight of manipulation, you move lighter. Without the constant fear, you breathe deeper. Without the lies clouding your vision, you finally see yourself clearly. And what you will find is someone stronger, wiser, and more powerful than the person who first entered the storm. Because surviving evil does not just break you. It rebuilds you into someone unshakable. Strength does not come from pretending the pain never happened. Strength is born when you face it, acknowledge it, and decide it will no longer control you. For too long, you may have carried wounds in silence, afraid that speaking them aloud would make them heavier, but silence only gives them more power. What you hide festers, what you bring into the light begins to heal. The moment you stop denying your hurt is the moment you begin reclaiming your life. Healing is not weakness, it is rebellion against the forces that tried to break you. Evil wants you to stay trapped in anger, shame, and despair because those emotions keep you tethered to it. Choosing to heal is choosing to sever that tether. It is the refusal to let what harmed you define you. It is saying you may have written part of my story, but you will not write the ending. That choice takes more courage than anything you endured because healing requires you to believe in a future that looks nothing like your past. Psychology reveals that one of the most powerful tools of recovery is reframing. Reframing does not erase what happened, it changes how you carry it. Instead of seeing yourself as a victim marked forever, you begin to see yourself as a survivor shaped by strength. Instead of focusing on the time you lost, you focus on the wisdom you gained. Every scar becomes evidence not of weakness, but of resilience. This shift in perspective transforms your pain into a source of energy rather than a chain of limitation. Healing also demands forgiveness, but not the kind that excuses or minimizes what was done to you. Forgiveness in this context is not about setting them free. It is about setting yourself free. It is releasing the grip of bitterness, refusing to let the poison of resentment run through your veins. Holding on to hatred keeps you bound to the one who hurt you. Letting it go cuts the tie. It does not mean you condone their actions. It means you choose peace over chains. And peace is powerful. Peace gives you clarity. Peace allows you to rebuild without constant fear of collapse. Peace opens the door to new connections, deeper relationships, and a future defined not by survival, but by growth. To claim peace is to declare that you are no longer available for chaos, no longer accessible to harm, no longer living on the battlefield they created. Healing does not happen all at once. Some days you will feel strong, others you will feel the weight return, but every step counts. Every small act of self-care, every decision to honor your boundaries, every moment you remind yourself of your worth is part of the rebuilding. Consistency, not perfection, is what leads to transformation. And slowly, piece by piece, you will rise. When you heal, you do more than recover. You evolve. You become someone who cannot be fooled as easily. Someone who recognizes manipulation the moment it appears. Someone who carries wisdom carved by experience. And in that evolution, you not only protect yourself, you inspire others, because when people see that you can break free, they begin to believe they can too. And that is how healing becomes more than personal victory. It becomes a force that lights the way for others lost in the same darkness. There comes a point when healing shifts into rebuilding, and rebuilding requires more than letting go of the past. It demands creating a future worth fighting for. Freedom is not just the absence of chains, it is the presence of vision, purpose, and direction. Without vision, the emptiness left behind by leaving something toxic can feel overwhelming. But with vision, that emptiness becomes space you get to fill with strength, growth, and meaning. You cannot rebuild your life by accident, you must design it. That design begins with clarity about who you are and who you refuse to be. For too long, evil may have convinced you that your worth was negotiable, that your identity was fragile, that your voice did not matter. Rebuilding means rewriting that script. It means declaring that your worth is non-negotiable, that your identity is unshakable, that your voice is undeniable. Each declaration becomes a brick laid in the foundation of a life that no one can destroy. Psychology tells us that progress is anchored in goals, but not just external achievements. The deepest progress comes from internal commitments to your values, your peace, and your strength. When you commit to living in alignment with your truth, external victories follow naturally. Boundaries strengthen, relationships improve, opportunities appear, not because the world changes overnight, but because you walk into it differently. You carry yourself as someone who knows who they are and refuses to shrink for anyone. Rebuilding also requires patience. You may want immediate results, but growth is not rushed. It unfolds through consistent choices, repeated daily, that compound into transformation. Choosing to speak your truth when silence will feel easier. Choosing to walk away from negativity even when it tempts you back. Choosing to invest in your mind, your body, and your spirit instead of pouring yourself out for those who never deserved you. Each choice is small in the moment, but monumental over time. Along the way, you will feel the pull of the past. Memories will resurface, doubts will whisper, and fear will try to convince you that moving forward is dangerous. But fear is not a signal to stop. It is proof that you are stepping into new territory. Courage does not mean the absence of fear. It means moving forward in spite of it. Every step you take while afraid proves that fear does not own you. And with each step, its voice grows weaker. The power of rebuilding is not only in what you create, but in who you become during the process. You become someone who knows how to rise after being broken, someone who understands the depth of darkness, but chooses light anyway, someone who cannot be deceived by false masks because you've already seen behind them. That kind of strength is not temporary. It is permanent. Once earned, it never leaves you. Rebuilding your life after encountering evil is not just about recovery. It is about transformation. It is about creating a reality so full of strength, clarity, and purpose that no amount of darkness could ever infiltrate it again. When you commit to that process, you stop being defined by what you endured and start being defined by what you built. And that is the ultimate victory. Not just surviving, but thriving beyond anything you once believed possible. The journey of transformation becomes unshakable when you realize that protecting your energy is not selfish. It is essential. Evil feeds on access. It thrives when you are too available, too forgiving, too willing to explain yourself to those who only twist your words. Rebuilding your life requires a fierce commitment to guarding the space around you. Every boundary you set is a declaration that your peace is sacred, your mind is valuable, and your heart is not open ground for destruction. Boundaries are not walls meant to isolate you. They are gates carefully placed to decide who is worthy of entering your life and who is not. When you honor those gates, you protect the growth you fought for. You stop handing your energy to those who only drain it. You stop giving your time to those who do not respect it. You stop allowing your emotions to be shaped by people who thrive on chaos. In doing so, you create room for the people, opportunities, and experiences that nourish you instead of break you. Research shows that the quality of your environment directly shapes your mental health. The more toxic energy you allow near you, the harder it becomes to maintain clarity and strength. But the moment you become intentional about what you allow in, your healing accelerates. You notice your mind becoming calmer. You notice your confidence growing. You notice that the energy you once wasted on surviving others is now free to be invested in creating, learning, and thriving. This shift is powerful because it teaches you that not every battle is worth fighting. Some battles are traps designed to pull you back into the chaos you left behind. You don't need to argue with those committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need to convince those who refuse to see your worth. You don't need to prove yourself to people who would never value proof. Walking away is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is the understanding that your energy is better spent building your life than defending it against those who aim to tear it down. Guarding your energy also means guarding your inner dialogue. Evil may no longer be around you, but its voice may still echo inside your head. Every negative belief they planted, every insult you internalized, every doubt they left behind must be challenged. When the voice says you're not enough, you answer with truth. When it whispers you can't succeed, you remind yourself of every step you've already conquered. When it tries to resurrect shame, you meet it with dignity. This is how you reprogram your mind, replacing their lies with your truth. The deeper you protect your energy, the stronger your sense of self becomes. You begin to notice that you no longer attract the same chaos because your presence radiates a different standard. People who once would have preyed on your kindness sense, they have no entry point anymore. Instead, you attract those aligned with your values, those who respect your strength, those who support your growth. Your world shifts not by accident, but by design. And in that shift, you find freedom. The kind of freedom that comes when you realize you no longer live on the defensive. You are no longer defined by surviving harm, but by thriving in the strength you built. Protecting your energy turns your life into sacred ground, where only what aligns with your peace, your power, and your purpose is allowed to remain. That is how you secure the future you deserve. The more you protect your energy, the more space you create for growth that once felt impossible. Growth is not just about moving forward. It is about expanding into the fullness of who you are meant to be. When you have been surrounded by evil, your world shrinks. You learn to walk carefully, to think small, to minimize yourself just to stay safe. But that was survival. Survival was never meant to be your permanent state. Once you step beyond survival, the call is to expand, to stretch, to rise into a version of yourself that refuses to be confined by fear or past pain. Expansion begins in the mind. Your thoughts are the soil where either limitation or possibility will take root. If you let the seeds of doubt and insecurity planted by others remain, they will continue to grow weeds that choke your potential. But when you choose to plant new seeds, belief in your strength, commitment to your vision, faith in your worth, you create a mental environment that fuels growth. Every affirmation of truth becomes water for those seeds. Every courageous action becomes sunlight. With consistency, your inner garden begins to flourish, and what you once thought impossible becomes your new reality. Growth also requires you to embrace discomfort. The path to transformation is not paved with ease. It demands that you step into spaces where your old self would have hesitated. It asks you to speak when silence feels safer, to take risks when retreat feels easier, to keep moving even when fear whispers that you should stop. Discomfort is not a signal of weakness. It is proof that you are expanding beyond what once limited you. The discomfort you face today is the strength you embody tomorrow. At the heart of growth lies responsibility. You may not have chosen the pain you endured, but you must choose what you do with it now. Taking responsibility means refusing to let your past dictate your future. It means saying, I will not waste the lessons I've learned. I will use them to build a life of purpose. Responsibility shifts you from victim to creator. Instead of being at the mercy of what happened, you become the architect of what will be. Psychology shows that purpose is one of the strongest drivers of resilience. When you attach your growth to a purpose greater than yourself, every struggle becomes fuel instead of a barrier. Purpose gives you direction when life feels uncertain. Purpose reminds you why your healing matters. Purpose transforms your pain into contribution, allowing your story to not only elevate you, but to inspire those who still need hope. Growth also reshapes your identity. You stop defining yourself by wounds and start defining yourself by wisdom. You no longer see yourself as someone who was fooled by darkness, but as someone who learned to recognize light. The more you grow, the more unshakable you become. The lies that once manipulated you lose their grip. The traps that once caught you fall apart in your presence. You move differently because you know differently, and that knowledge cannot be taken away. This is the reward of growth. A life not controlled by fear, not defined by harm, but guided by strength, clarity, and unbreakable purpose. Growth is how you rise above evil, not just surviving its impact, but proving with every breath that it failed to stop you. And in that rise, you don't just change your life. You become living proof that no darkness, no deception, no cruelty is stronger than a soul committed to transformation. True growth cannot exist without discipline. Discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you are becoming. It is the daily choice to honor your future instead of repeating your past. Evil thrives on chaos, on impulsive reactions, on the absence of structure. But when you build discipline into your life, you create order that darkness cannot penetrate. Discipline is not a cage. It is freedom because it gives you control over yourself when the world tries to control you. Every powerful transformation is rooted in small, consistent actions. Waking up with intention instead of drifting through the day. Choosing to speak truth when lies press against you. Refusing to be pulled into old cycles that no longer serve you. Each of these choices may feel small, but together they form the foundation of unshakable strength. Psychology confirms this. Habits shape identity. The person you become is not decided in one dramatic moment, but in the repeated patterns you reinforce day after day. Discipline is also the antidote to manipulation. Evil seeks to destabilize you, to throw you off balance so you react without clarity. But when you train yourself to pause, to reflect, to act with purpose instead of impulse, you rob manipulation of its power. No one can control a person who controls themselves. That is why discipline is not just about routines. It is about mastering your mind, your emotions, your focus. It is about becoming so grounded that no deception can shake you. There will be days when discipline feels heavy, when the temptation to fall back into comfort whispers loudly. But comfort is not your ally. Comfort is often the disguise of stagnation, and stagnation leaves the door open for old patterns to creep back in. Discipline demands sacrifice, but every sacrifice is an investment. You are trading short-term ease for long-term freedom. You are choosing to build something lasting instead of settling for something fragile. This commitment requires resilience. You will slip at times, but discipline is not about perfection. It is about persistence. Each time you realign with your purpose, you strengthen your willpower. Each time you push through resistance, you prove to yourself that you are capable of more than you believed. Over time, discipline shifts from being an effort to being your identity. You stop forcing yourself to act with strength You simply become the kind of person who does. And with discipline, self-respect deepens. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you send a powerful message to your mind. I am reliable. I can trust me. That trust is priceless because it replaces the dependence once created by manipulation. You no longer need validation from those who harmed you. You no longer need approval from anyone outside of you. Discipline reconnects you to the only validation that truly matters, your own. When discipline becomes your foundation, you stop living as a reaction to evil and start living as a creation of strength. You move with intention, not fear. You build with vision, not desperation. You rise with consistency, not luck. And that is where transformation solidifies. When you no longer rely on fleeting motivation, but on unshakable discipline. In that moment, you are untouchable because nothing and no one can control a person who has mastered themselves.